You are listening to the Brand Architect Podcast, and this is your host, Ani Alexander.
Hello there everyone, and welcome to the Brand Architect Podcast, the podcast that helps you establish your brand and grow your online audience. It's me, Ani Alexander, and today we're going to have yet another interview, a very useful one, something that I'm really interested in. We're going to talk about content repurposing, and I think it's something that is very useful and it's something that is worth talking about. But before that, let me remind you that the sponsor of the Brand Architect Podcast is SiteGround. SiteGround offers managed web hosting that customers love. The hosting services are crafted for personal, business, or enterprise projects. And whether you're using a custom solution or a popular open source software like WordPress, SiteGround lets you build better, faster, safer websites more easily and offers multiple hosting options that your website can grow into. So all you have to do is visit www.anialexander.com/SiteGround and you will get 60% off on all hosting plans. I'm sure you're going to love it. I'm using their services. My website is hosted with SiteGround. I'm very happy with them, and I really hope that the offer is attractive enough to check it out. Okay, so let's get to the interview straight away and see what my special guest has to say about content repurposing. Okay, so hello everyone and welcome to the Brand Architect Podcast. Today I'm talking to Anna Hoffman. Actually, I'm very excited because when I was just starting doing stuff online and when I had no clue how everything is being done, etc., I did a little bit of research, and Anna's name came up over and over again when people were talking about social media, when they had experts bringing in advice, when people were talking about traffic and blogging and all that stuff. So I'm really happy that we finally had the chance to do the interview. The first time I met you online, I read about you online, read some interviews. I never thought I would be podcasting and eventually talking to you. So it's really exciting. And so basically, Anna is the founder of Traffic Generation Cafe, where she provides all kind of expertise and tips about how to increase traffic and online profits. So I'll let you take it from there if you want to give a little bit more details about what you do right now, specifically what projects are you working on, and then we can take it from there.
What a great info. I can only hope that I can live up to all the praise you just gave me. Anyway, but as you said, I am the founder of Traffic Generation Cafe, which I've had for about 5 years now. And in 5 years, it has evolved into all kinds of areas of traffic, but mostly I moved away from talking about SEO because 5 years ago, SEO was the thing, and it was somewhat easier to do because it was more mathematical, so people could figure it out a lot better. Once it progressed into, SEO now is about content marketing, it became a lot more complicated because it's very, very hard to teach someone content marketing. There's a lot of free ideas, free flow, just creativity that has to go into it that you simply cannot teach people how to do. So what I've been doing is kind of exploring different ways of teaching people about traffic generation without overwhelming them with you have to do so many different things. You have to do social media, all 5 to 10 of them. You have to do SEO. You have to write content. And by the way, you still have to run your actual business on the side. So It's just became a lot more complicated that way. So again, I've been trying to figure out an easier, a better way to do this, and basically I've been just trying to figure out what works and what does not with traffic generation and content marketing specifically. And what I have recently kind of zeroed in on in the past year or so, I've realized that content marketing these days, you have to, because everybody's doing it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like everything else new, social media new, everybody's on it, everybody's excited, everybody's driving traffic, and then literally everybody's on it and nobody's listening, and it's a lot of noise, and you have to rethink how you do it. Well, the same thing with content marketing, right? Everybody's doing it, and you have to figure out a different angle of actually reaching your target audience. And for me, that's where content repurposing comes in. And content repurposing to me is really kind of today of content marketing, because content marketing on its own does not work any longer. With content marketing, most people just write blog posts, right? Because that's what we're told we need to do. But then those blog posts just sit on their blogs.
Yeah,
Who
exactly.
sees them? Who reads them? No one. Do you keep writing something that no one is reading, right? So that's why content marketing, the way it's taught these days, is really broken. And that's why content repurposing, taking your content, existing content and new content, and taking it to where your audience is right now so that it can bring back the traffic that your website, your business needs.
Yeah, I really like what you said over there, because I remember when content marketing was becoming trendy and everyone was really interested in it and people were talking about that. We had this main message told by everyone that you have to become a content machine and create content consistently, regularly, even on daily basis. But exactly to your point, if you are doing all that and spending all this time and effort, but at the end you are still invisible to the people you are creating the content for, then the quantity doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter whether you created 7 blog posts or 7 videos in a week or just one, because all of them would be unnoticeable anyway. So I really like this idea of this challenge basically people are having. It's not only creating content, that's just the first phase of the thing. It's also making sure that the content reaches who you created it for. So let's talk about that phase first before getting into repurposing. Let's just start by someone who is relatively new to the field, meaning that he doesn't really have a large audience and followership and loyal sort of consumers of the content yet, but he has a good quality content, which is quite rare these days also, right? We
Yes.
sort of So someone, and it's very sad, what I'm seeing is there are lots of people who are creating good quality stuff and most of them are invisible, which is really sad. So what is the first step they should take after creating the content in order to make sure that they ensure at least the first stage of sort of visibility and gaining their first, let's say, 100 listeners or 100 readers, or, depending what they are creating?
Absolutely. Well, my first advice would be stop writing anything at this point. Just stop creating more content and work with what you have. Now, we are assuming here that the content that is sitting on your blog right now is great, right? But what really makes great content, and I gave it a very good deal of thought, because there has to be some sort of objective way of valuing a piece of content, right? And to me, what it came down to is your piece of content, let's say a blog post that's sitting on your blog right now. The purpose of that blog post is to solve your target audience problem, right? That's what makes it valuable, and that's what makes it great. It's not great storytelling. It's not, you wrote a novel and it's interesting to read. If nobody gets anything practical out of it that they can take back to their life, to their business, to their whatever it is that you write about, then that content is not valuable to them. So, number one, make sure your content solves one specific problem for your target prospect. That's what makes it valuable. If it does that, the next thing to do is to go find where your target audience is right now. And most likely, they're all over social media. They are all over video sites like YouTube, of course. They are reading other blogs that have a lot more traffic than you do. And those are the places where you need to be at right now, so that you, whenever your target prospect is looking for the answer to that very problem, the specific problem that you are answering in your blog post, she needs to be able to find you there. That's the purpose of content repurposing. Think of it as like blog promotion, just in a different, because when people think generally about blog promotion, we think what? Well, we're going to go on social media and share it a few times, right? But again, if you don't have the audience on social media, who's listening to you, right? And so you're going to send out a bunch of cold emails, which has become a trend, and I hate it because I'm hit several times a day with emails about, oh, I love reading your blog. Judging by what they wrote, they've never been to my blog before, of course.
That's true.
But then, I think that your audience will definitely benefit from this how to apply makeup blog post. Would you for me? I'm like, seriously? So this is what blog promotion is becoming, this kind of cold email era of, I have no idea who you are, but promote your stuff for me.
Yeah.
Obviously does not work whatsoever. So again, I keep going to content repurposing because it's just, to me, it's so exciting, and it's the answer to so many problems that a modern business owner faces, which is mostly lack of time, right? Lack of audience, and building new audience takes time. So again, lack of time, lack of audience, and a lack of understanding what it really takes to be out there and to reach the people where they are. And to me, and Google as well, I mean, content repurposing not only helps you with social media, with blog promotion in general, it also helps you to get on the first page of Google in so many different ways. It builds links to your content, as well as your content published on third-party sites all of a sudden gets ranked on Google, and then through that, traffic comes back to your website. So please stop me at any point, because I get too excited talking about this, and if I need to slow down and stop on any one point, you just let me know, okay?
Yeah, I definitely will. It's very interesting. Let's just, maybe in order to make it more clear for the listeners, let's just take an example of content repurposing, so we don't really talk in vague terms, so they know what exactly you mean by saying that. So let's say I'm producing a podcast, an audio podcast at this point, not a video yet. So I definitely have loads of content already built up, more than 180 episodes up to now. Let's take any episode as a sample and think about how it can be repurposed, maybe.
Absolutely. Well, content repurposing. First of all, I call it recontent, because if you're like me and you talk about this all the time, it gets very tiring saying content repurposing all the time. So recontent, okay? And recontent is basically taking your existing content and putting it into different formats and on different platforms where your target audience is right now. So it's the same content, right, that you have created, whether it's a podcast or a video or a blog post, whatever it is, that's your first piece of content. Now you need to put that content into a different format of sorts. So, for instance, podcasts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, podcasts are generally for people who want to listen, whether when they commute or, make dinner, work in the garden, whatever it is, right? But why not do a video as well, right? Because right now we could be on camera talking about exactly the same thing, but then all of a sudden you have a video that you can repurpose as well. And video is a type of content because it's the same content as your podcast, but it's a different format. It's in a format of a video. And all of a sudden video can be submitted to YouTube and Vimeo and Wistia and of course, you can use it on Facebook as a native video and, repurpose it for Instagram video and Twitter video. So many different things that you can do with a video. So now you will have podcast and a video. What happens if you transcribe the whole session? All of a sudden you have a blog post that you can publish. And then you can take that blog post and you can let's say break it down into 2-3 parts, whatever makes sense, and publish those different 2-3 parts on LinkedIn Pulse and then Facebook Notes and Medium and Quora, wherever it is that people who you are targeting are right now. That's where you go, because all those platforms have a lot more authority than you do, and they have the readership that you don't. So you go where they are. And what happens, people on those platforms might be searching for the very same topic that you are answering in your piece of content. And they find you because you are there for them. And because that piece of content that you posted somewhere, and this is very important, has to have call to action. And call to action is, I'm so glad you liked what you just saw, listened to, heard, read, whatever it is. Now, here's more. Here's a link. You can have more of this stuff. For instance, you have 10 ways of doing anything, right? You publish 5 ways on LinkedIn Pulse and then say, hey, there are 5 more ways. Follow this link. That's your call to action. So through the call to action, you're redirecting the readership from those very popular, high-trafficked website back to your website. And that's how you create that traffic loop that you did not have before.
Yeah, it's really good that you mentioned that, because I'm guilty in that too. And I've noticed that many people sort of create content, do a live stream, for example, because it's very popular these days. They talk for about half an hour. They reply to comments. They reply to questions, and they never tell what's next or what the person should do. And I think if someone watched you for 30 minutes or if someone listened to a podcast for 40 minutes, whatever it is, it means they already invested so much that they are more likely that they will do whatever you will be asking them to do if it's just a small action. So call to action is really, really important. And we sometimes we get so excited about our content that if we forget to put it at the end.
Absolutely. And so much so, I actually have been teaching a content repurposing class of sorts for about the past couple of months. And I have all kinds of business owners in that class, anyone from painters, authors, I've got a comedian. I've got people who are in fitness industry, in diet, nutrition, basically across the board. And the main problem is that they create content and then they don't know how to put a call to action into it, because they don't create their content thinking what's next. They just create it. Yeah. And now I'm telling them, don't create any content or re-content unless you know what the call to action is. Come up with that first. What do you want people to do next after reading or listening or viewing your content? Then you create it, because otherwise it gets very it becomes the afterthought.
Yeah.
And it should be the forefront, because that's how you drive traffic. If you don't have a call to action, whether it's on your site, and especially when it's elsewhere, when you don't have a call to action, how do you get the benefit of your hard work? You don't. So, extremely important thing.
That's true. That's true. And what about, since you mentioned call to action and driving traffic, let's make this one thing clear in terms of what you think about this. When you're driving people to your website, do you drive them to one specific landing page or to the home page? Or because many people are sort of, there are so many options. Many people can't decide where they should drive people to.
Mm-hmm. Well, so your website should really have one ultimate goal that you want people to take, right? For the most part, it's going to be a financial goal of some sort. You want them to sell them on something, right? Whether it's a product or a service or it's affiliate marketing, whatever it is, you want to sell them on something. However, selling cold traffic on anything is almost impossible. And even if it's not cold traffic, they're kind of sort of warm because they already heard you somewhere, and they're coming because you managed to get them interested in you and what you have to say. Still, when they come to your blog, your website, you can't hit them with buy this now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So for the most part, the most logical call to action is sign up for my email list, right? So that's the one call to action that I think applies across just about every business, no matter what stage they're in. Mm-hmm. So remember, there should be really only one call per action on a website. Your overall goal, this is what my goal is. This is what I want everybody who comes to my website to do, to sign up for my email list. With that in mind, it doesn't really matter which specific page you drive them to, as long as, number one, you provide value, even more value, I should say, on that page. And number two, that page too has a call to action to sign up for your email list. Mm-hmm. Whatever it is, most of the times, sending people to a homepage is really not a great idea, because when you think of a homepage, for the most part, for a blog, for instance, it will have a lot of different directions to go.
Yeah.
And, it has more blog posts, it has, this tab and that tab, and learn more about me and more social media links. It just has too much. So that probably is my least favorite page to send traffic to, unless, like if you go to trafficgenerationcafe.com, you'll see that, sorry about that.
It's okay.
That my homepage is actually a landing page. It's a sign-up page for my email list. With that in mind, it's really a very good page to send them to, and a very easy one, because if people hear about me anywhere, they go usually to trafficgenerationcafe.com, of course, and that's where they have a chance to kind of learn about me a little bit and continue to the blog if they choose not to sign up, but at least they have that option. So again, no matter what page you send people to, it has to have that goal front and center: sign up to my email list. That's how you go from no traffic to traffic that pays your bills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, completely clear. So what about, we spoke about content and re-content. What about the following? When you have your brand and positioning in mind, how do you approach the content and re-content part in terms of the messaging, in terms of style? Does it really need to be very consistent and within your sort of brand? Or can you go a little bit wider and cover some things which are relatively off topic but are part of you and what you care about and stuff like that, to reveal a little bit of your personality? Or, how do you look at that part?
I think it's a great question. And I think the answer is, of course, it depends. And here's what I mean by that. So number one, when you are the brand, the face of your business, so your personality comes into play no matter where you're at. And it should come into play, first of all, on your website and through your content. You can't write with one voice on your site and then go out in public, on social media, wherever it is at, and be a completely different person, right? Mm-hmm. That does not make any sense whatsoever. So that's out. But the one thing that people forget to focus on when it comes down to branding is, I think it's the most important thing to brand is your niche and your expertise in that niche. You have to make sure that people know what you are an expert in. Mm-hmm. If I'm talking about traffic generation, right, for the most part, and then all of a sudden I'm interested in fitness, and I start talking a lot about fitness. It's just my personal interest. But then people start hearing me talk about that, and then they get a little bit confused, especially the new ones that haven't known me for a while, haven't followed me for a while, and they heard me speak about fitness and then traffic generation. It can be a little bit off, a little bit confusing, a little bit different. I wouldn't recommend doing that. Now, in my case, I talk about coffee a lot. I just do because I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. But you see, that's why my site is called Traffic Generation Cafe. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So coffee is even tied to my website. That's sort of the overall branding theme for me and my website. So that works very well. But again, fitness probably wouldn't, because it makes no sense. So especially when you're first starting, stick with your niche. Do not brand yourself as anything else but an expert in this one area. For instance, I'll give you more examples. Larry Kim, he is the founder of wordstream.com, a very famous, very popular guy. He was, I think it was 2015 or 16, a search personality of the year. Whenever I think of Facebook ads or ads anything, I immediately think of him, mm-hmm. because he is everywhere talking about this very topic. He branded himself so very well. Now, I know about him, his passion for unicorns and all kinds of things. I know that. But most of all, I know him as an expert on Facebook ads and AdWords as well. Mm. So that's what you're trying to do. That one topic that you want to become an expert in, that's all you want to be talking about, no matter where you are, right? So then people will start connecting your name to that very topic, and that's what you want. Now, let's think about it a little more visually. How do you brand yourself in such a way that people actually remember who you are and what your business is about? That's where your logo, different colors, and kind of staying on point more or less visually, so that when people go to your Facebook page or Twitter or LinkedIn profile or Instagram feed, they kind of recognize it just by looking at overall, because they remember seeing the same theme, the same colors, the same logo, so that's generally very important. But you know what? When you're first starting, nobody will know, and no one will notice anyway. So don't stress out about those things too much. When you grow bigger and people start recognizing your name, that's when you can afford to get away with more. that's when you can afford to talk about this and that and kind of, just be a little more free expressing who you are as a person. But in the beginning, it's definitely all about your niche, your expertise, and maybe a little bit of, definitely use your logo or the links on all the visuals so that people do know where that great quote came from or that great tip came from. That's very important. But it's still, within your niche and your expertise.
Yeah, totally makes sense. But then I will need to give you a follow-up question in that case. Very often there are people who really, when they stick to a niche and have several sort of, topics, subtopics they cover in that niche, they may, and if you follow them, so you end up listening to the interviews they give out on podcasts, you see them live streaming, you read their blog posts. Sometimes there is a risk of becoming redundant and coming up with the same message and, the same thing over and over again. So how do you make sure that you stick to the topic, to the niche, especially in the beginning, but at the same time, you don't become very predictable and maybe even a bit boring for those people who sort of consume anything that is related to you because they follow you?
Again, great question. You have such a knack coming up with great questions. So the way you make it interesting to your listener, viewer, reader is, again, by addressing their pain points, the problems that they're experiencing, right? Obviously, you don't want to talk about the same problem again and again and again. That makes no sense. And if you have kind of run out of ideas of what to do, now this may sound like a little bit out of your league, but trust me, just hang in there for a second. I will explain. That's where keyword research comes in. But not just keyword research, question research. This is where you need to sit down and really, truly dig into what kind of questions your target audience is asking, right? So within my niche, I'll give you an example since I know what I'm talking about here, more or less. So other people talk about, let's say, content repurposing, right? Of course they do. They give you different angles, different this and different that. But what I've noticed is they don't talk much about specifically driving traffic from that content. How do you actually drive traffic? And that's what I talk about because that's my niche. So whatever your niche is and whatever the topic in front of you, give it the spin, give it an angle according to your expertise, right? So you go to a website like answerthepublic.com. Are you familiar with that one?
No.
Okay. That's a great one. Answerthepublic.com. It's a free question research website. Basically, it was created by a couple of guys who wanted to make use of Google autocomplete, Google suggestions, and Google suggestions are incredible because Google is basically just giving you a huge freebie here as to what other questions people might be asking when you're typing in a certain query, And you have to remember, if you're scared about the word keyword and you don't know how to do any of it, you have to remember that anything you type into Google search box is basically a keyword. If you typing how do I feed a cat, that's a keyword. So you basically just have to find out what it is that your target audience is typing in that search box. And that's what Google auto suggest that's where it's amazing at, and that's where answerthepublic.com is wonderful because they use Google autocomplete and they will show you questions that your potential audience might be asking about a potential topic. So you just put in your topic, Start with something broad. It doesn't matter. So I would start with, website traffic, for instance, and then see what it tells you. And then you can kind of narrow it down from there and write down the questions that come up that you feel like you're an expert in, that you can deliver good amount of information on, and just work through those questions. In each episode, in each blog post, answer one question. Give them everything that they need, the value that they need, so that at the end, after reading or listening, they go away with, wow, I don't have that problem anymore. I just got all the information I need to solve the problem. And that's where it in journalism, this is called beat reporting.
Yeah.
You have your niche, your area that you're writing about, and then each time you find a slightly different angle to talk about. And there's no formula here. You kind of just have to.
Yeah, that's true.
The best way to figure it out is by knowing what people are asking in your niche, and start with that question research, and then do something as simple as ask people, go to social media and say, hey, I'm talking about this and that. What kind of questions do you have? If you have readers on your blog, in the comment section or before the comment section, ask them a specific question. Ask them to give you feedback on something, or do like a survey pop-up. Don't be annoying now, but survey pop-up that says, hey, would you like to learn about this, and that? So just listen to your audience that you already have, and they will give you plenty of stuff to write about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of, I think it's very important to follow their needs and what they're curious about, because sometimes if you can't really predict by yourself, you may think it's something that is very important or not important at all, or very simple and very clear, so it's not worth creating content around it because everyone knows. But sometimes those are just assumptions, and you may end up realizing that the reality and your potential audience is is not very clear about what is obvious to you. So it's always worth going back to them and getting some feedback and some insights as well. I totally agree.
Absolutely, no question.
Okay, so to wrap this up, basically, if we have to conclude in terms of what's going on and where to start, basically, if someone has created already a content, he should stop before continuing and try to see what's the main aim, come up with a call to action, and start re-contenting what exists, right?
Exactly. And the main purpose here, I know this is like a short interview and I can't really teach you anything, but I want to take away this one very important thing. People, don't get stressed out that you don't know what you're doing and you don't have the time, because content repurposing, recontenting should take place of everything else you're doing right now. Any kind of promotion, any kind of social media presence, any kind of SEO work, it will replace all of it. It's a lot faster and easier to do than writing new content from scratch, because as we just talked about, you don't have to come up with new angles to repurpose something that you already have, because you already have the angle. So it's a lot easier, and it brings it a lot better results than you doing the same thing over and over again, knowing that it's not working to begin with, right? So that's insanity, according to Einstein. So we don't want to do that. But anyway, so recontent definitely works on different levels. So since I can't teach you anything right now, I'm trying to figure out what is the best. I know. Okay, so I have, as I mentioned, I'm teaching this content repurposing course. It's not actually open to new students at the moment because I'm just learning what my students know, what they don't know, exactly what we just talked about, so that when the course is released, I kind of cover all the basics and then some in it. But what you can do if you go to content boomerang, contentboomerang.training. Contentboomerang.training. Content Boomerang is what I call my content repurposing course, because it's sort of like you throw your content out there and it comes back and brings back traffic and leads. That's why it's a boomerang. So there will be an opt-in form there because, again, the course is not open right now. But what you get is a PDF where I basically put down how recontent works. And I give a lot of practical things that you can do and how to do them so that you can get a better idea of what it is, how you can apply to your business, and how it can save you time and eventually money, because you'll be focusing on things that actually do work versus things that are not producing any results, right? So definitely do that. Contentboomerang.training. And then just come visit me at trafficgenerationcafe.com as well. I talk a lot about recontent everywhere I go. So that's the best place to kind of get hold of me, read some of my blog posts, and get connected with me.
Okay, absolutely. I mean, I have been reading your blog, and it's very valuable and useful, and I totally recommend that. So definitely go and check this out. Absolutely, and thank you so much for the time. I know, I mean, as you said, I know we couldn't really cover many things. There is so much more to all these topics, and I will be revisiting that eventually, of course. But I hope that, you know, it was still valuable. We still covered stuff that would be useful, at least for the start. And if you want to dig deeper and find out more, check out trafficgenerationcafe.com and contentboomerang.training, right?
Yes, you got it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot for the chat. And I hope that you'll, with each day, you will find out new and more effective recontenting ways.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, so I really hope that you found the interview useful. I'm sure that we haven't covered loads of things that we could cover eventually. So probably at some point I will make another interview and cover the topic in more depth and details. But I think what I really needed to do was to raise the topic, to let you know that a thing like this exists and that it's a very useful tool for establishing your brand and growing your online audience. So you can get the resources provided by Anna and investigate meanwhile, but most probably we'll revisit the topic and maybe we will even talk to Anna once again about this. Meanwhile, please, if you haven't done so, check out SiteGround's web hosting services. I really love them. I use them for my websites, and I'm sure that the offer is very attractive. You will get 60% off from all website hosting plans if you use the special link for Brand Architect podcast listeners at anialexander.com/SiteGround. Meanwhile, I'm planning to have another show which will be live streamed. So we will be having a little bit of more interaction together. I will give you more details on it on the other episode, on the next one. If you haven't checked out yet, please make sure that you check out my Patreon page at anialexander.com/Patreon. Meanwhile, have a great weekend. And as always, I'll meet you next week.